Why narcissists seem to lose their power when they come face to face with an empath. It's almost like their usual tricks don't work, and instead of controlling the situation, they're the ones who start to crumble inside. Narcissists thrive on control, attention, and emotional reactions. But empaths carry something that deeply unsettles them: clarity, calmness, and a light they can't dim. In this video, we're going to uncover the 12 things empaths do, often without even realizing it, that make a narcissist absolutely miserable. Some of these might surprise you, because what feels natural and effortless to an empath is often the very thing a narcissist despises most. Stay with me until the end, because the last one is the most powerful. It's the ultimate way empaths turn the tables without saying a single word. And if you've ever dealt with a narcissist, I'd love to hear your experience in the comments below. Your story might be the very thing that helps another empath feel less alone. And of course, if this topic speaks to you, make sure to subscribe, because we're building a space where empaths reclaim their strength and shine brighter than ever. When empaths see through a narcissist's mask, something very powerful begins to happen. Narcissists build their entire identity around illusion. They craft a mask of confidence, charm, and superiority to hide the emptiness that sits just beneath the surface. To most people, this mask is convincing. They appear successful, intelligent, even magnetic, and many fall for it because narcissists are skilled performers. But empaths are different. An empath has an ability that cuts straight through the performance. They don't just listen to words or watch actions, they feel the emotional energy behind them. And when the energy doesn't match the story, the empath notices. That quiet sense of truth-telling unsettles the narcissist more than anything else, because it exposes what they spend their entire lives trying to hide. For the narcissist, the mask is not just a strategy, it is their survival. Without it, they fear rejection, ridicule, and abandonment. So when an empath looks at them and sees not the polished image, but the insecurity, fear, and emptiness behind it, it strikes at their core. Narcissists need others to believe in their performance, because that belief feeds their ego. But when an empath doesn't buy into it, the narcissist feels as though the curtain has been pulled back, and suddenly they're standing in the spotlight, without their costume. That is one of the most terrifying experiences for them. This is why narcissists often avoid empaths at a deeper level. They might still try to engage, to control, or even to charm them, but something about the empath unsettles them. It's not always in what the empath says, often it's simply in the way the empath sees, a soft but steady gaze, a calm silence, or even a knowing smile can leave the narcissist feeling exposed. They realize that their mask, which usually fools others, is transparent to this one person. And for a narcissist who thrives on image, this is unbearable. When an empath sees through the mask, they also strip away the narcissist's favorite weapons. Manipulation depends on deception. Gaslighting only works if the target doubts their own perception of reality. Love bombing only succeeds if the person believes the affection is genuine. But empaths, tuned into the undercurrents of emotion, pick up the inconsistencies. They might not always confront the narcissist directly, but they silently register the lie. And that awareness makes manipulation ineffective. For the narcissist, it's like throwing darts at a shield. The effort no longer lands the way it's supposed to. What makes this even more miserable for narcissists is that empaths rarely use their insight to humiliate or attack. Instead, they quietly detach. They stop feeding into the drama. They don't rise to the bait. And they no longer offer the emotional reactions the narcissist craves. This calm resistance can feel like suffocation to someone who survives on constant validation.
Imagine a performer standing on stage, giving their best act, but the audience isn't clapping or cheering. Instead, one person in the front row is just watching with quiet, piercing understanding. That single gaze is enough to unravel the performance. That is the role of the empath in the life of a narcissist. But this isn't just about making a narcissist miserable. It's about the quiet strength empaths carry. For years, many empaths doubt themselves, wondering why they feel different, why they notice things others don't, why they can't just go along with the surface charm. Yet what feels like a burden is actually their greatest power. The ability to see through masks protects them. It helps them step away before the damage goes too deep. And while narcissists may despise this gift, it is the very thing that preserves an empath's light. The exposure of the mask also creates an inner conflict for the narcissist. On one hand, they may feel drawn to the empath, because being seen for who they are touches something deep inside, something they may secretly long for. On the other hand, it terrifies them, because being seen also means being vulnerable, and vulnerability is the one thing narcissists fear most. So they lash out, withdraw, or attempt to regain control with more intensity. But the empath, rooted in awareness, does not crumble. This imbalance of power is what truly makes the narcissist miserable. They realize they cannot fully own the empath in the way they desire. The beauty of this moment lies in its quietness. Empaths don't need to scream, accuse, or prove anything. Simply seeing, simply knowing is enough. Narcissists live in fear of exposure, and the empath's presence alone delivers it. They cannot wear the mask comfortably anymore. They know that at least one pair of eyes sees beyond it, and that knowledge eats away at them, even in silence. Over time, this dynamic forces narcissists to make choices. Some will discard the empath, unable to bear the discomfort of being seen. Others will fight harder for control, testing boundaries in desperate attempts to reassert their mask. But no matter what they do, the awareness has already broken the illusion. The empath has shifted the balance. Even if the narcissist pretends otherwise, they can no longer fully believe in their own performance. The mirror has been placed in front of them, and even if they turn away, they know it's there.
For the empath, the lesson is profound. Seeing through the mask is not about punishing the narcissist or making them miserable. That misery is simply the byproduct of truth. The real gift lies in understanding that perception is protection. By trusting their instincts, by honoring what they feel beneath the surface, empaths free themselves from the web of manipulation. And in doing so, they reclaim their power. So when empaths see through the narcissist's mask, it isn't just an uncomfortable moment for the narcissist. It's a turning point. It reveals the fragility of illusion and the quiet strength of truth. It reminds us all that no matter how carefully a mask is crafted, it can never withstand the clear vision of someone who sees with both the eyes and the heart. And that simple act of seeing, calm, steady, unshaken, is enough to make the narcissist feel the one thing they dread the most: powerlessness. When empaths stay calm during chaos, they disarm one of the narcissist's strongest weapons: emotional manipulation. A narcissist thrives in storms. They create tension, conflict, and confusion because it feeds their need for control. In the middle of chaos, most people react. Some shout back, some break down, some retreat in fear. And to a narcissist, every emotional reaction is fuel. They feel powerful when they can push someone's buttons and watch the eruption that follows. But when an empath stays calm, it is like pulling the oxygen from a fire. Suddenly, the flames die down, and the narcissist is left with smoke and silence. For the empath,
Calmness is not weakness, it is power. Empaths feel deeply, but they also sense the emotional current underneath every situation. They know that reacting with anger or fear only feeds the narcissist's game. So they breathe, ground themselves, and refuse to give away their peace. Imagine a storm raging outside, winds howling, trees bending. But inside a quiet room, there is stillness. That is the energy an empath carries when facing a narcissist's chaos. And nothing frustrates the narcissist more than realizing their storm has failed to shake that stillness. This calm presence exposes the narcissist's desperation. When they shout, provoke, or try to twist reality, the empath doesn't mirror back the panic. Instead, they hold steady. That steadiness becomes a mirror, reflecting just how chaotic and irrational the narcissist truly is. For someone who spends their life controlling the narrative, this is unbearable. Narcissists don't just want to create chaos, they want others to drown in it. But when the empath stands like an anchor, rooted and unmoved, the narcissist feels powerless. Their control slips through their fingers, and with it, their sense of superiority begins to crumble. Staying calm doesn't mean the empath doesn't feel pain. It means they refuse to let the narcissist dictate their emotional state. This refusal is powerful. Narcissists are used to pressing emotional triggers and watching people explode. They expect tears, rage, begging, or fear. When none of that comes, they are thrown off balance. They may escalate, shouting louder, creating bigger drama, or throwing new accusations. But the empath's calmness remains like a quiet shield. Every outburst that meets silence, every manipulation that meets stillness, deepens the narcissist's frustration. Over time, this calm strength teaches the empath something essential, that peace is their greatest weapon. Narcissists don't know how to fight peace. They can argue with words, twist stories, and play mind games, but they cannot control someone who won't hand over their emotional reactions. Calmness cuts the strings of the puppet master. Without those strings, the narcissist is left flailing, unable to perform their usual dance. And that loss of control is what truly makes them miserable. This dynamic is also healing for the empath. Many empaths spend years trapped in cycles of reacting to narcissists, feeling drained, guilty, or ashamed after each encounter. But once they realize they have the power to remain calm, everything changes. The empath learns that they don't have to fight on the narcissist's battlefield. They can choose stillness instead of struggle. They can choose presence instead of panic. And in doing so, they reclaim their energy. This shift is not only frustrating for the narcissist, but also freeing for the empath. What makes this even more powerful is that calmness does not require explanation. The empath doesn't have to justify, argue, or prove anything. Their presence alone speaks louder than words. Silence, when paired with calm strength, becomes the loudest response. The narcissist, desperate for a fight, finds nothing to grip onto. They are left alone with their own chaos, and without an audience to feed from, that chaos begins to collapse in on itself. But perhaps the most important part of this calmness is what it reveals. It shows the narcissist that their control is an illusion. It shows the empath that they are not powerless, that they are not at the mercy of manipulation. In the stillness, the truth becomes clear. Chaos is the tool of the narcissist, but peace is the strength of the empath. And when peace meets chaos, peace always wins. So when an empath stays calm during chaos, they do more than frustrate the narcissist. They transform the entire dynamic. They shift from being a target to being a mirror, from being controlled to being in control. They show that serenity is not surrender, but the highest form of strength. And in that moment, the narcissist is forced to face the one thing they cannot stand, a person they cannot control, a spirit they cannot break, and a heart they cannot shake.
When empaths refuse to compete for attention, they shatter one of the narcissist's deepest cravings. A narcissist thrives on being the center of every room, every story, every conversation. They survive on applause, admiration, and validation like air itself. To them, attention is not just pleasant, it is essential. Without it, they feel invisible, irrelevant, and exposed to the emptiness they spend so much time trying to hide. This is why they fight for the spotlight at every opportunity. They interrupt, exaggerate, boast, and sometimes even create conflict, all to ensure that all eyes remain fixed on them. But empaths are not wired the same way. An empath does not need the spotlight to feel valuable. They are comfortable in the background, content in quiet moments, and fulfilled in the authenticity of real connection rather than loud displays. And this difference, though subtle, is what makes a narcissist miserable. When a narcissist pushes for attention, most people respond instinctively. Some rise to the challenge, competing to reclaim the spotlight. Others give in, allowing the narcissist to dominate, just to avoid conflict. Both reactions fuel the narcissist's ego, but an empath often does neither. Instead, they quietly step aside, not because they feel inferior, but because they simply don't care for the competition. They don't need to be louder, brighter, or bigger than anyone else. For the narcissist, this lack of competition is confusing. They expect others to either fight them or feed them. But the empath offers neither. And in that absence, the narcissist feels something they dread the most: insignificance. To a narcissist, being ignored is unbearable. Attention is their lifeblood, and when someone refuses to play the game of who shines brighter, it strips away their sense of control. The empath's refusal to compete is not an attack. It's a quiet declaration that they won't measure their worth against someone else's need for admiration. This quiet strength creates a mirror the narcissist cannot stand to look into. Because if attention is not the true measure of worth, then what are they left with? They are left with emptiness. They are left with the silence of their own insecurities. And that silence is louder than any applause they crave. Empaths, by nature, seek depth over display. While narcissists chase external validation, empaths are guided by internal connection. They thrive in genuine conversations, heartfelt moments, and shared silences. They value being present over being praised. So when a narcissist tries to pull them into a competition for the spotlight, the empath quietly declines. That refusal is not weakness, it is power. It tells the narcissist that their game is meaningless, that their stage is irrelevant, and that true strength is found not in how many people are watching, but in how deeply you connect with those who truly matter. This refusal also exposes the narcissist's fragility. Without competitors, the narcissist feels hollow, because their victories mean nothing without an audience. They don't just want attention, they want to win it. They want to feel they have conquered others in the endless race for admiration. But when the empath refuses to even step onto the track, the narcissist cannot claim victory. It's like trying to prove you were the fastest runner, but no one shows up to race. The trophy becomes meaningless, the stage becomes empty, and the narcissist's grand performance falls flat. That is the misery empaths create, without raising their voice, without fighting, simply by choosing not to play. And here is where the beauty of the empath's approach shines. By not competing, they free themselves from the exhausting cycle of comparison. They don't chase approval, so they don't fear losing it. They don't cling to the spotlight, so they don't panic when it shifts away. This calm detachment is what drives the narcissist mad. For someone who lives on the highs and lows of constant recognition, watching another person glow quietly without demanding attention feels like watching someone break all the rules of survival. To the narcissist, it feels impossible. To the empath, it feels natural. Over time, this refusal to compete can shift the entire power dynamic. The narcissist may try harder, speaking louder, showing off more, and demanding bigger displays of admiration, all in an attempt to provoke the empath into playing along. But the empath doesn't rise to it. They remain steady, offering no fuel, no reaction, no applause. And the harder the narcissist tries, the more desperate and transparent they become. Eventually, their act is exposed for what it really is: an endless attempt to fill an emptiness that cannot be filled. And the empath, quietly observing, walks away with their peace intact. What makes this especially powerful is that the empath never has to humiliate or attack. They don't need to call out the narcissist's behavior or argue about the spotlight. They simply refuse to join the game. That quiet refusal is more effective than any confrontation because it speaks to the heart of what the narcissist fears: being unseen, being unimportant, being irrelevant. And when an empath refuses to compete, the narcissist's worst fear becomes reality. So when empaths refuse to compete for attention, they do more than frustrate the narcissist. They dismantle the very foundation of their ego. They remind us that true worth is not measured by how many people watch, but by how deeply we live our truth. They show that power is not in applause, but in authenticity. And they prove that walking away from the spotlight does not make you weaker, it makes you untouchable. When empaths show genuine kindness, they reveal something a narcissist can never replicate. Narcissists often try to imitate kindness. They can appear charming, generous, or even selfless when it serves their image. But beneath the surface, their actions are almost always transactional. They give only to receive, they smile only to manipulate, and they help only when there's something in it for them. Empaths, however, move from a completely different place. Their kindness flows naturally. It is not a performance, it is a reflection of who they are. And this effortless warmth becomes a mirror that highlights the narcissist's coldness, their emptiness, and their inability to truly connect. That contrast is uncomfortable for them in ways most people never see. For the narcissist, kindness is a strategy. But for the empath, kindness is a language of the soul. When an empath reaches out to someone, comforts them, or gives without expecting anything back, they shine a light on what the narcissist lacks. The narcissist, who thrives on appearances, suddenly feels exposed. They realize that while they can demand attention, they cannot inspire genuine affection. While they can manipulate loyalty, they cannot create authentic love. And standing next to the effortless kindness of an empath, their entire image feels hollow.
This is why narcissists often mock, dismiss, or downplay the kindness of empaths. They might call it weakness, naivete, or foolishness. But beneath the surface, what they actually feel is discomfort. Because every act of pure kindness from an empath silently reminds them of the gap between who they pretend to be and who they truly are. It reminds them that their love is conditional, their generosity calculated, and their empathy non-existent. And the more they are around it, the more they feel the sting of comparison. The misery for the narcissist grows deeper because others can feel this difference too. People are drawn to empaths not because they perform kindness, but because they embody it. There's a warmth in their presence, a trust that feels natural, a connection that doesn't need to be earned with drama or manipulation. This magnetic authenticity makes others feel safe, seen, and valued. Meanwhile, the narcissist, despite all their efforts to command admiration, cannot create the same feeling. They might win attention, but they cannot win hearts. And watching others gravitate toward the empath's kindness fills them with jealousy and frustration. The empath's kindness also dismantles one of the narcissist's key tactics: emotional intimidation. Narcissists often use cruelty, criticism, or cold withdrawal to keep people in line. But when an empath responds with kindness instead of retaliation, the tactic backfires. The narcissist expects anger, fear, or tears, but instead they are met with compassion or calm care. This response confuses them because it refuses to fuel their chaos. It denies them the satisfaction of seeing someone crumble under their cruelty. And more importantly, it reflects their cruelty back to them in the clearest way possible. Standing in the light of kindness, their harshness looks sharper, their coldness feels colder, and their emptiness becomes undeniable. What makes this dynamic even more unbearable for narcissists is that empaths do not show kindness for recognition. They don't seek applause or demand gratitude. Their kindness is not a tool, it is a truth. This quiet, unwavering compassion cannot be controlled or manipulated. The narcissist can try to diminish it, exploit it, or even punish it, but they cannot erase it. And every time it appears, it silently reminds them of what they cannot be. For someone who builds their entire identity on pretending to be more than they are, this reminder cuts deeply. Over time, the narcissist may even try to imitate the empath's kindness more intensely, desperate to compete. They may put on grand displays of generosity or staged moments of compassion to prove they can do the same. But their actions lack the authenticity that people can feel from an empath. No matter how hard they try, the mask eventually cracks and the emptiness underneath shows through. And each failed attempt only makes the narcissist more aware of their own limitations. For the empath, showing kindness is never about making the narcissist miserable. It is simply who they are. But it has this effect nonetheless, because true kindness shines light into dark places. It reveals truth without confrontation. It shows everyone, including the narcissist themselves, what is real and what is fake. And in that revelation, the narcissist feels the weight of their own coldness, a burden they spend their entire lives trying to hide. The lesson here is powerful. Empaths often feel their kindness is a weakness, something that makes them vulnerable to exploitation. And it's true that narcissists often try to take advantage of it. But the deeper truth is that kindness is one of the strongest shields they possess. It disarms manipulation, it frustrates cruelty, and it exposes falsehood. Narcissists may rage against it, but they cannot destroy it. And in the end, the empath's genuine compassion stands as proof that light is always stronger than the illusion of power. So when empaths show genuine kindness, they don't just highlight the narcissist's coldness. They remind everyone watching that real strength is not found in control, but in compassion. They prove that authenticity cannot be faked, that warmth cannot be manufactured, and that love cannot be manipulated. And for the narcissist, who spends their entire life chasing shadows of these truths, there is nothing more miserable than standing beside someone who naturally embodies what they will never truly possess. When empaths walk away without drama, it's like pulling the rug from under a narcissist's entire act.
Narcissists thrive on attention, whether it's positive admiration or negative arguments. They don't really care as long as the spotlight stays on them. But empaths, with their quiet strength, know that sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Instead of raising voices, disparate explanations, or tears to feed off of, the empath simply walks away. No raised voices, no desperate explanations, no tears to feed off of. Just silence. And that silence is deafening to the narcissist. You see, narcissists rely on drama to feel alive. They want to provoke reactions that validate their control. But when an empath chooses peace over chaos, calm over conflict, the narcissist is left with nothing to grab onto. It's like trying to start a fire without oxygen. The empath's calm departure denies the narcissist their supply and shows a kind of self-respect the narcissist can't stand. For them, it's unbearable because they crave being the center of attention even in your goodbye. Walking away without drama exposes their emptiness and proves they never had the power they thought they did.
When empaths set firm boundaries, it shakes a narcissist to the core. Narcissists are used to people bending to their will, tolerating their demands, and overlooking their manipulations. They thrive in environments where others say yes out of fear, guilt, or obligation. But when an empath calmly and confidently says no, it disrupts that entire pattern. Boundaries, to a narcissist, are like walls they can't climb and mirrors they don't want to look into. Those limits expose their inability to control you, reminding them that their power has boundaries too. For the empath, setting boundaries isn't about punishing the narcissist. It's about self-respect. A firm no says, my peace matters, my time matters, my energy matters. And this kind of clarity is deeply unsettling for someone who feeds on control. A narcissist wants to push past limits, test your patience, and blur the lines until they dominate the relationship. But a boundary stops them cold. It draws a clear line they can't ignore, no matter how much they rage or sulk. To the empath, a boundary is protection. To the narcissist, it feels like rejection. And that rejection is something their fragile ego can't handle. By enforcing boundaries without guilt, the empath takes back control of their own life, showing the narcissist that manipulation and intimidation will no longer work. In that moment, the empath is no longer their supply. They're their mirror, reflecting back the truth. The narcissist's power only exists if you hand it over. When empaths value authentic connections, it creates one of the strongest and most uncomfortable mirrors for a narcissist. Narcissists live in a world of appearances, where image, status, and control mean everything. They thrive on surface-level charm, temporary admiration, and the illusion of closeness that they carefully manufacture to keep others hooked. But deep down, they fear intimacy, because true closeness requires vulnerability, honesty, and accountability, qualities they struggle to maintain. This is where empaths stand in sharp contrast. Empaths crave depth in their relationships. They want truth, real feelings, and genuine connections that go beyond masks and performances. When an empath shows this hunger for authenticity, it shines a light on the narcissist's shallowness, exposing how fragile and powerless their constructed identity really is. For an empath, relationships are not games. They do not invest in people for control, attention, or validation. They invest because they feel a deep sense of connection and because they honor the bonds that tie souls together. This longing for sincerity makes them powerful.
A narcissist may attempt to impress them with grand gestures, fake promises, or exaggerated stories, but the empath quickly notices the cracks beneath the surface. They sense when words lack substance, when affection is manipulative, or when love is conditional. This natural ability to see through facades unnerves narcissists because it takes away their greatest weapon, deception. Empaths are like truth seekers, and truth is the one thing narcissists cannot comfortably handle. The moment an empath demands authenticity, the narcissist begins to panic. Why? Because authenticity means exposing the emptiness behind the mask. It means revealing insecurities, admitting flaws, and letting go of the carefully built false self. For a narcissist, this is terrifying. Their entire identity depends on keeping others convinced that they are in control, superior, and untouchable. When an empath doesn't fall for the show, the narcissist feels stripped of their armor. They are forced to face the fact that they cannot provide real emotional intimacy because they fear vulnerability more than anything else. And in the presence of someone who values genuine connection, their power starts to crumble. But here's the beauty of the empath's stance. They don't demand authenticity as a way of controlling the narcissist. They don't force it, manipulate it, or beg for it. Instead, they quietly live by it. They embody it. Empaths show with their actions that real love is honest, that real trust is mutual, and that real intimacy is built, not performed. They demonstrate that relationships can thrive without games, without lies, and without power struggles. For a narcissist, this is a foreign world, one they cannot dominate because it requires emotional depth. This difference creates an invisible wall between them. The narcissist may try harder, putting on bigger acts or louder performances, but the empath's natural longing for truth will always see through it. Over time, this dynamic often exhausts the narcissist. They may lash out, withdraw, or try to devalue the empath in order to regain control. They may call them too sensitive or too demanding, mocking their need for real connection because it highlights their own inability to provide it. But these reactions only reveal how powerless they truly feel in the presence of authenticity. The empath's desire for genuine bonds exposes the narcissist's weakness. Their relationships are hollow, built on control instead of care, manipulation instead of mutual respect. It forces the narcissist to face a reality they've spent their entire lives avoiding, that their version of love is not real love at all. For the empath, valuing authentic connections also becomes a shield. It protects them from falling deeper into the narcissist's traps. Because the empath knows what they want, realness, they become less willing to accept crumbs of attention or fake apologies. They stop making excuses for behavior that lacks sincerity. They stop settling for shallow gestures of affection that don't match actions. This clarity strengthens them, helping them step away from toxic cycles. It's not that they don't care, it's that they care too deeply about truth to waste their energy on lies. And this is where the true power of the empath lies. By insisting on depth, they remind themselves of their worth, and by doing so, they weaken the narcissist's grip. Imagine the narcissist standing with their painted mask, rehearsed lines, and dramatic flair, hoping to control the narrative. Then picture the empath quietly standing before them, asking for honesty, consistency, and vulnerability. The contrast is striking. The narcissist's world is built on shallow waters, while the empath's world dives into the deep ocean of authenticity. One thrives on appearances, the other thrives on reality. This clash is not loud, not dramatic, but it is powerful enough to make the narcissist feel small and powerless. The empath doesn't even have to fight. Their mere presence, their insistence on authenticity, becomes a form of resistance. Ultimately, when empaths value authentic connections, they create an environment where narcissists cannot breathe comfortably. It strips away the illusions and forces everyone around them to choose depth or deception, realness or performance. And while the narcissist may struggle, the empath thrives because their heart was never built for games. It was built for truth. And in a world full of masks, that truth shines brighter than any false charm. This is why empaths are powerful, because their authenticity doesn't just protect them, it exposes everything false around them.
When empaths stay true to themselves, they carry a kind of quiet power that narcissists simply cannot break through. Self-awareness, inner peace, and a strong sense of identity act like invisible armor, protecting the empath from manipulation. Narcissists thrive on bending others to their will, shaping people into extensions of their own ego and feeding on the insecurities of those around them. But when an empath refuses to bend, when they hold on firmly to who they are at their core, the narcissist is left powerless. It is like trying to control a flame that won't burn out, no matter how hard you blow on it. For empaths, staying true to themselves doesn't come from arrogance or rebellion. It comes from an inner knowing, a deep connection with their values, their emotions, and their sense of self-worth. This is what narcissists find so unbearable. They cannot stand being near someone who cannot be reshaped or manipulated into their mold. Every time the empath chooses self-respect over compromise, every time they say, "I know who I am and I won't lose myself for you," it's a small act of defiance that shakes the narcissist's control. This authenticity shines so brightly that it exposes the narcissist's emptiness, reminding them of the shallow mask they wear. And in that moment, the empath's inner peace becomes their greatest weapon, one that no amount of manipulation can destroy.
When empaths don't react to manipulation, the entire power dynamic that narcissists rely on begins to crumble. Narcissists live for reactions, whether it's confusion, anger, tears, or desperate attempts to win back approval. Gaslighting, guilt-tripping, the silent treatment. These are not random behaviors. They are carefully crafted tactics meant to provoke a response, to pull the empath into an emotional tug-of-war where the narcissist always feels in control. But when the empath sees through the game, when they stand still instead of being pulled, something shifts. Silence becomes stronger than shouting. Calmness becomes louder than confrontation. An empath who refuses to take the bait sends an unspoken message: "I see what you're doing, and I'm not giving you what you want." And that is the narcissist's deepest frustration. Without fuel, their manipulations lose power. Without a reaction, their control slips away. For the empath, this is not about coldness or revenge. It is about protecting their peace and refusing to be a puppet in someone else's performance. The narcissist is left miserable, staring into a void where they once fed on drama and emotion, while the empath walks away carrying a strength that cannot be touched. When empaths are loved by others, it does something to a narcissist that shakes them to their core. Narcissists crave admiration, attention, and validation more than anything else, but the way they try to get it is through control, manipulation, and performance. Their charm is calculated, their kindness is conditional, and their generosity almost always comes with strings attached. People might fall for the narcissist's act for a while, but deep down, something feels off. There's an emptiness that eventually reveals itself because people can sense when love isn't real.
when warmth doesn't come from a genuine place. On the other hand, empaths don't have to try to win people's hearts. They simply do. Their presence feels safe, their energy feels grounding, and their compassion feels sincere. People are drawn to empaths in a way that cannot be forced, and this is something the narcissist envies deeply because it highlights their greatest insecurity. They cannot manufacture what empaths carry naturally. The love that others show an empath isn't built on manipulation. It's built on trust. When empaths walk into a room, they often make people feel seen and heard in ways they rarely experience elsewhere. They listen without judgment, they give without expecting anything in return, and they create connections that run deeper than surface-level charm. Narcissists notice this, and it burns them inside. They may smile on the outside, pretending not to care, but deep down they are seething because they realize that no matter how hard they try, they can never inspire that same effortless loyalty. Their entire existence revolves around creating an image, but an empath doesn't need an image. They just are, and that authenticity is magnetic. This difference creates a mirror the narcissist can't stand looking into. When they see others love an empath, they are reminded of the hollowness within themselves. Narcissists might have a crowd around them, but it's a crowd built on fear, obligation, or shallow admiration, not genuine respect or love. The empath, however, gathers people who admire them for who they are, not what they can provide or how they can perform. The narcissist may try to sabotage these relationships, spreading rumors, planting seeds of doubt, or isolating the empath so that others don't see their light. But here's the truth. Real love is resilient, and people who truly know an empath often see through the narcissist's games. And the more the narcissist tries to tear it down, the more obvious their jealousy becomes. For the empath, this natural love they receive is not about popularity or attention, it's about alignment. They live in a way that values honesty, kindness, and connection, and people respond to that energy. It isn't forced, it flows. Narcissists can mimic words, they can study behaviors, they can even mirror emotions to trick others into thinking they care. But over time, their mask always slips. An empath's warmth doesn't have to be rehearsed. It is who they are at their core. And because of this, people trust them, sometimes even opening up in ways they never could with anyone else. This level of trust and admiration is the narcissist's nightmare, because it shines a spotlight on their inability to form the same kind of deep bonds. What makes this even more painful for narcissists is that deep down, they desperately want the same love and acceptance. But because they're trapped in cycles of manipulation and ego, they sabotage every opportunity to experience it. They can't relax into vulnerability, they can't let themselves be real because being real terrifies them. To them, authenticity feels like weakness. Yet when they see an empath being loved for exactly that, being authentic, it creates an unbearable tension. It forces them to confront the fact that their entire strategy for being admired is hollow compared to the effortless love empaths receive simply by being themselves. And this is why the narcissist often targets empaths in the first place. They want to absorb some of that light, to bask in the admiration the empath naturally attracts. Sometimes they even try to convince themselves that if they stay close enough, maybe some of that love will spill over onto them. But it doesn't work, because love built on authenticity can't be borrowed or stolen. It must be earned. And the narcissist, unwilling to change their ways, will always find themselves standing on the outside, looking in. For the empath, being loved by others is not a weapon, it's a blessing. But in the eyes of the narcissist, it becomes a threat. They see it as competition, proof that the empath holds a kind of power they can't replicate. And this drives them into deeper envy, making them lash out, criticize, or even attempt to diminish the empath's shine. Yet here is the beauty of it. True love and trust cannot be dimmed by someone else's bitterness. People continue to gravitate toward the empath because sincerity always wins over performance in the long run. So when empaths are loved by others, it does more than make narcissists miserable. It exposes the truth. It reveals the shallow nature of the narcissist's connections and the depth of the empaths. It shows that authenticity outlasts manipulation, that trust outshines fear, and that genuine love can never be faked. For the empath, it is a reminder to keep shining, to keep valuing the connections that flow naturally, and to never apologize for the light that makes others feel safe and seen. And for the narcissist, it is a silent defeat, a reminder that no matter how much they try to control the narrative, they can never counterfeit the kind of love that comes from a genuine heart. In the end, when empaths are loved by others, it is more than just a source of comfort for the empath. It is a living example of what true connection looks like. It reminds the world that love doesn't come from power games, masks, or a manipulation, but from presence, sincerity, and compassion. And that is something a narcissist can never truly touch, no matter how much they envy it. Forgiveness is often seen as a sign of weakness, but in truth, it is one of the greatest strengths an empath can possess. When an empath forgives, they are not excusing the narcissist's behavior, nor are they granting them permission to continue their toxic actions. Instead, forgiveness is a conscious decision to free themselves from the heavy burden of bitterness and resentment. By forgiving, the empath steps out of the emotional prison that the narcissist tries to trap them in. They refuse to let anger consume them or dictate their path forward. However, what makes empaths especially powerful is that their forgiveness never comes with forgetfulness. They may release the anger, but they never erase the memory of what was done. This balance is what frustrates narcissists the most, because they depend on people forgetting, resetting, and allowing the same cycle of manipulation to repeat. The empath, however, remembers. They recall the lies, the gaslighting, the betrayal, and they use those memories as protection. This means the narcissist loses their grip because they can no longer exploit the empath in the same way again. Forgiving but not forgetting becomes a shield. It heals the empath, but it also creates an invisible barrier that the narcissist cannot cross. To someone obsessed with control, this reality is unbearable. It means they have lost both the power to wound and the power to return. And nothing threatens a narcissist more than being permanently disarmed by the quiet resilience of an empath.
There is something breathtaking about an empath who finally steps into their light. For too long, empaths often grow up believing they must dim themselves, keep quiet, or hold back their natural brilliance to keep the peace. They become conditioned to silence their opinions, soften their laughter, and hide their unique talents because the people around them, especially narcissists, feel threatened by it. But the day an empath decides they will no longer live small, no longer wait for permission, and no longer beg for validation, everything changes. To shine without permission means living fully. It means the empath chooses joy, authenticity, and purpose without seeking approval from anyone, especially those who once thrived on controlling them. Narcissists cannot stand this. Why? Because the narcissist's entire game is built on control, deciding when the empath can feel happy, when they can feel sad, when they are worthy, and when they are not. To watch the empath flourish outside of their grip is like watching their empire crumble in front of their eyes. When an empath thrives without permission, they begin to do the very things narcissists resent the most. They express themselves freely. They take up space without apology. They embrace their gifts and talents in ways that draw people toward them naturally. And most importantly,
They no longer play by the narcissist's unspoken rules, rules designed to keep the empath dependent, small, and constantly seeking approval. A narcissist wants the empath to believe that love must be earned through obedience. They want the empath to believe that their worth is conditional, that they are only valuable when they are serving, sacrificing, or feeding the narcissist's ego. But when an empath learns to shine without permission, they break this illusion. They discover that love does not need to be earned. It can be given freely, first by themselves. They learn that their worth is not conditional. It exists simply because they exist. This is what makes the empath so dangerous in the eyes of the narcissist. A free, glowing empath cannot be manipulated. When you no longer need someone's validation, they cannot control you with praise. When you no longer fear rejection, they cannot control you with silence. When you no longer bend to their opinions, they cannot control you with criticism. In essence, shining without permission removes every weapon from the narcissist's hand. But this transformation does not happen overnight. Empaths often spend years feeling trapped under the weight of others' expectations. They feel guilty for prioritizing themselves. They feel selfish for saying no. They feel like imposters when they celebrate their own successes. Narcissists exploit this hesitation, constantly reminding them, "You're nothing without me," or "No one will ever love you the way I do," or "Don't get too full of yourself." These words are daggers aimed at the empath's confidence. Yet once the empath recognizes the manipulation for what it is, the healing begins. To shine without permission is not arrogance. It is liberation. It is the quiet but powerful decision to stop apologizing for existing. Imagine an empath who once walked on eggshells, suddenly standing tall, laughing louder, creating boldly, and loving themselves fiercely. This energy is magnetic. People are drawn to it, inspired by it, nourished by it. The empath becomes a beacon for others who are still trapped in cycles of self-doubt, showing them that freedom is possible. Narcissists envy this light because it exposes their darkness. They spend their entire lives pretending to be admired, loved, and respected, but their connections are built on manipulation, not authenticity. They can charm, but they cannot truly connect. They can impress, but they cannot inspire. They can demand loyalty, but they cannot earn genuine trust. Meanwhile, the empath shines naturally without effort. Their light does not depend on domination. It depends on authenticity. This difference is something the narcissist can never replicate, no matter how hard they try. And so when empaths live fully and thrive unapologetically, narcissists are left with a deep sense of inadequacy. Their worst fear comes true. They are no longer the center of the empath's world. They are no longer needed, no longer feared, no longer relevant. The empath has moved beyond them, not with anger or revenge, but with a kind of radiant peace that says, "You no longer define me." Think about it. What could be more powerful than refusing to ask for permission to live? The empath does not wait for the narcissist's approval to laugh loudly, to dress beautifully, to pursue dreams, to love openly, or to succeed boldly. They no longer shrink themselves to avoid conflict. They no longer dim their light to make someone else comfortable. They realize that shining is not something they need to earn. It is who they were meant to be all along. This inner glow also serves as protection.
because once you begin to shine in your truth, you naturally repel those who seek to exploit you. The narcissist may still attempt to re-enter your life, using old tactics of charm or guilt, but they no longer work. The empath's light is too strong. It exposes manipulation instantly, and it draws healthy, supportive relationships instead. Living without permission is also deeply healing. For empaths, it feels like reclaiming lost years, lost joy, and lost self-worth. They rediscover passions they abandoned, friendships they neglected, and dreams they once thought were impossible. Every small act of shining, whether it's speaking their mind, setting a boundary, or celebrating a success, becomes a declaration of freedom. And here's the irony. Narcissists want to be admired, but admiration achieved through control is hollow. Empaths, however, are admired effortlessly when they shine naturally. They feel safe around them. They feel understood. They feel uplifted. This is something a narcissist can only imitate, but never embody. And this difference makes the empath's light even more threatening, because it highlights the narcissist's emptiness. In the end, when empaths shine without permission, they win the ultimate victory. Not because they defeat the narcissist directly, but because they refuse to play the game at all. They step out of the narcissist's shadow and into their own light. They thrive not because someone allowed them to, but because they finally allowed themselves to. This is the greatest form of rebellion against narcissistic control. Living fully, joyfully, and unapologetically. No revenge, no bitterness, no performance, just pure authenticity. For the empath, this is freedom. For the narcissist, this is misery. So if you are an empath, remember this truth. You do not need permission to be who you are. You do not need validation to pursue your dreams. You do not need approval to shine. The moment you decide to embrace your light without apology, you take back every ounce of power that was ever stolen from you. And in doing so, you not only make narcissists miserable, you inspire the world around you to do the same.